This session will highlight practical strategies for identifying, implementing, and scaling EdTech innovation, bridging data and capacity gaps within systems and aligning EdTech with broader instructional and equity goals focused on experiences from the Global South. And we're joined today by colleagues from the Global Schools Forum and their partners, and they're going to share with us their experiences of working at a system level with EdTech to support educational systems and to ensure equity across those systems. We've got some lovely examples coming up. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sarah Rotich, who is going to take us through the presentations by her partners and introduce the Global Schools Forum for those of you that are not familiar with it. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Nicola, and thank you everyone for being here today. We're so excited to be part of this conversation about EdTech leadership and how it can be used to strengthen education systems. I'll start by giving a short background introduction to Global Schools Forum, and then we'll have an opportunity for each of our partners who are here today to talk a little bit about their work. After that, we'll go into a panel discussion, and at the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Global Schools Forum is a collaborative community of non-state organizations who are all working to improve education at scale for children in low and middle income countries. We now have more than 180 organizations in over 70 countries, part of our network, and together we reach 134 million children in over 1 million schools around the world. Next slide. In conversations with community members who are all working to accelerate impact at scale, we've seen a few different pathways that can be really successful in helping education solutions achieve greater impact. One is through catalytic funding, another is by providing tailored technical support to help navigate specific challenges, and a third is through evidence sharing and opportunities to learn from each other. So we started asking, how can we catalyze funding and technical support to education organizations who are seeking to scale? And how can we work to disseminate solutions and evidence about accelerating learning outcomes? And so we began the work of the Impact at Scale Labs, which seek to transform education systems by working with local innovators to scale their solutions. So we select promising solutions and drive funding and specialized technical support to them so that they're able to build and implement their scale strategy and work to improve learning outcomes and create evidence about how they're improving those outcomes and their own process to scale. We've now supported 14 organizations across 3 cohorts, and we have 4 of those organizations represented here today. First, we have Nganga Kibandi, the Partnership and Advocacy Director at Dignitas, who were part of our first cohort focused on COVID recovery. We also have with us Simon Graffy, co-founder and CEO of Inspiring Teachers, Damini Mainkar, the co-founder and chief operations officer at Leadership for Equity, and Joshy, the director MP programs at Peepul. And these 3 organizations are part of our current cohort focused on foundational learning. So we will begin by hearing from each organization about the work that they're doing related to EdTech leadership and embedding that in education systems. So I'll hand it over to Simon Graffy, co-founder and CEO of Inspiring Teachers.
Thanks, Sarah. Next slide, please. Great. So yeah, my name's Simon Graffy, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Inspiring Teachers. We are an evidence-driven nonprofit working in Ghana, Uganda, and Malawi. And we believe that teachers deserve to be given the tools to succeed. Teachers are one of the few things that as societies, we basically agree we should all kind of pool our money through taxes and support. And in a lot of education systems around the world, teachers are in place, but not being fully equipped to be as effective as they might be. So Inspiring Teachers, our work is about making sure that teachers are really empowered to be successful in improving, in making sure every child builds strong educational foundation in the early grades so that they can go on and thrive in the later grades. So next slide, please. So I'm gonna just, I told you a little bit about our work. So I'm gonna progress on to the next slide as well, please. Thanks. So I'm going to talk about our work in Ghana. That classroom you saw moments ago was in Ghana, where we're running this program called Tools for Foundational Learning Improvement in 139 schools. There's a mix of low-fee schools and government schools, and we have an 80-school testbed, government testbed program across a whole district. And I'm going to talk about just how that program works. So the approach would be called structured pedagogy, and it involves giving teachers, firstly, a teacher guide, a structured lesson guide for each literacy lesson that they teach across the whole curriculum in grade 1 to 3, and giving them training and support in implementing that. And so this the slide you can see in front of you, you can see our structured teacher guides. They involve first a segment on oral language development, then some phonics and some reading and writing, and they're provided alongside student workbooks. So teachers get 2 days of upfront training, then they, in their classrooms, use these teacher guides every day, and then they run assessments. And I'm going to talk through how that process works. And they do that using this application we've developed called Smart Coach, which is an offline first app. And then there's a dashboard. And so this approach integrates structured pedagogy, which in a way is like the closest thing education systems have to a vaccine for equipping children with the skills to be successful in later education. And I'll talk about how these digital tools kind of provide an implementation layer. They're kind of like the cold chain for vaccine distribution. So next slide, please, and I'll take you through the process and how it works. So firstly, so each day, teachers have the structured lesson guide and their students have a student workbook. And, when I was a teacher, I had to plan all of my lessons in advance. So I used to spend my Sunday evenings preparing my lessons. And this approach of structured pedagogy basically solves that problem for teachers and gives teachers a really great lesson for every lesson that they're to deliver in, and we're doing it in literacy and numeracy. So it's just based on the science of reading. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. So thanks. So thanks. So teachers are delivering this hour a day of structured literacy and also now maths. And then one of the challenges with structured pedagogy programs is that you launch the program, but you don't necessarily know, are all the teachers implementing the program? Are children progressing? And in education systems like Ghana, there's the government has an army of middle tier staff who work at district level who are responsible for supporting teachers through coaching. Now, in this program, each term, teachers conduct a one-to-one assessment using this application. It's a reading fluency assessment. So the way it works is the child reads on paper, and the teacher has this mobile application just on their smartphone. And as the child reads, they tap on each word the child makes a mistake on, and the app times. And so it then does a calculation to work out if the child's reading fluency and accuracy. Next slide, please. Now that enables the teacher to have a list of all of the reading fluency for each of their children, and that list is organized by level. So the idea here is to make it more salient to teachers which are the children in their class that need support, but also to get data flowing back to the district and to their school leaders so that the support that they're provided can be better targeted. So data flows firstly to the teacher's application, then also to the school leaders app, and to a district dashboard, which is then used to prioritize and manage coaching and support. Next slide, please. So the big unlock with these tools is really about, to put it simply, creating a feedback loop between intended and actual implementation, and intended teaching and actual teaching, and intended learning and actual learning. So it creates this feedback loop so that it's possible to track, are children learning, how consistently are teachers delivering the target pedagogy, are school leaders coaching their teachers, are the field staff at district level visiting schools, are they visiting all the schools, are they observing and coaching teachers, and that makes it possible to systematically manage program implementation, and just make a shift from like a top-down accountability-based inspection model towards one where people have the insights they need to take data-driven decisions day in, day out, to better support teachers and improve learning. Okay, next slide, please. So we are running an 80-school randomized control trial in Ghana in partnership with the Abdul Jamil Poverty Action Lab. So we're tracking a cohort of children who are getting this program approach, and we're basically seeing large effects. So we have 1,300 students that are in the sample, and their early grade reading proficiency is improved by using early grade reading assessments, is improved by 0.5 standard deviations. To kind of make that more concrete, there are 44% less children that can't read in the classrooms that are receiving the program. So these effects place the intervention in the top 10% of published randomized controlled trial effect sizes, and it's just 1 year into delivery. So we're really optimistic that this is just an effective model for helping teachers improve learning outcomes. So we'll keep tracking it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's our presentation. I look forward to discussion.
Thank you so much, Simon. That was great. Now we'll pass it along.
Is it me or yeah? Nicola, should I just start? I think Sarah is stuck. Sure. Hi. Hello, everyone. This is Damini, and I'm from Leadership for Equity. Very excited to share about our work. If we could go to the next slide. We work with the state and district education systems in India, and we work on strengthening the teacher and learning for students and teachers at scale. Next slide. Today, I want to share what we've learned about digitizing and implementing a classroom observation and a coaching system across a few large states in India. Can we go to the next few slides? I think we'll have to skip a few slides faster. Another slide, please. Yeah. I think when we began our work, we noticed a pattern across the field where we started working. One, teachers were being observed, but the feedback loops were not consistent. Different tools, different tools to capture different aspects of the work that kept happening, and also the data sat in WhatsApp groups, so the data sat in Excel sheets, but not often come together to help the administrator make sense of the data that is being collected. Plus, the problem of India is at scale, which means there are too many data sets that don't talk to each other. Given the current system that we have, there's a large data collection that happens right from not just academics, but also like from midday meals to enrollment to attendance. However, how do you make sense of everything coming together while the infrastructure and the administrative data collection happens a lot more cohesion, a lot more I would say, a lot more faster. What was also the gap is how do you bring multiple academic lens data pointers, which talks about inside the classroom, to also be able to make sense to drive the inputs towards the teachers. What we also saw is with governments investing a lot in edtech solutions or using technology to drive a lot of, resolving a lot of challenges, the tools weren't aligned to the kind of academic progress that was also needed for what we wanted to see the shift inside the classroom. So there was a lot of activity, but not enough coherence to bring all the data sets together. And this is where we saw an opportunity. We saw an opportunity to bring classroom observation as a practice, feedback as an important structure for teachers, decision making for the academic leadership within the system, into like one simple digital solutions that help them drive the right, I would say, the right solutions, the right interventions, all centered around classroom practices, all centered around how do you foster better teacher support systems for the teachers within our schools. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, I think this slide also talks about the problems, not just with the structure or the infrastructure, but also talks about the kind of approach that one system takes for teacher development as an idea. The trainings don't necessarily meet the needs of the teachers. That was one problem. So there were one trainings which sort of looked at the average requirement of the teachers. Two, there are too many tools to monitor a program or an intervention, but does not really have like an integration of all the data that we have at a macro level to draw trends with respect to what are really the needs of the teachers. How do we also meet the needs of the teachers? Is there also a possibility to have teacher development structures, to have teacher trainings, to have teacher inputs, all featured from what the data is telling us about inside the classroom? While the teacher assessments as a practice is very expensive, even though it's done, it has very limited measurable outcomes, right? How do you also look at not just like the knowledge growth or skill growth, but how do you also look at the process of a continuous data that feeds back into what the teacher inputs are needed? Next slide, please. We could skip this slide, go to the next slide. So what I really want to talk about is what is something that we've been able to drive at scale with the states that we work with. With one such state in Andhra Pradesh, one of the southern states in India, what we've been able to do is drive not just a solution which has a technology enabling the decision making, but also drive in the aspect of how do you focus on teacher development and teacher support system. So it begins with having one structured classroom observation tool that starts with all the officers, observers, which we also call teacher mentors at scale, on one app to have those classroom observations recorded. And those are live recordings. Those are consistent classroom observation cycles that were set as the first practice, as the first thought process that also came in from the system to drive at scale. Two, the observers that were recording the evidence were in a structured manner. While these data from the classroom were being recorded, what was also another piece of the puzzle that had to be resolved is how do you also have live dashboards that drive decision making for the officers that work on teacher development, right? So having state level dashboards, having district level dashboards enabled review meetings for the stakeholders to also ensure that the observations are consistent. The observations are across all the teachers that are mapped, and they are not in siloed. They are not in just with the schools where you have more teachers, where you have more enrollment, but staggered across the entire landscape of the state. The second piece of the puzzle was how do you use this data, and how do you use this data to also feed back into what are certain decisions that are being taken to drive teacher trainings or to create teacher modules. What we've been able to also do is drive the use of WhatsApp chatbot So basis on what the patterns that we see from the classroom observations, there are nudges that go to the teachers that talk about what are certain classroom practices, what are certain classroom strategies that the teachers could use inside the classroom that may serve also like a feedback for the teachers based on what are the trends that we see at every district level. So these evidences that are captured by our observers or the teacher mentors feedback not into just the officials also taking a stock on what the classroom practices are. Two, also feeds back into what are certain nudges that have to go back to the teachers that close also the feedback loop. This is also something that we also drive through the WhatsApp chatbot, where the teacher mentors that are on the field are now also starting to give out those strategies to the teachers. So that also means there are conversations that is happening between teacher mentors and the teachers where they're sharing these practices, where they're talking about what are certain changes that a teacher could bring inside the classroom, focusing on purely teachers' growth. And that is something that really helped us drive the right change for at a system level, right? If you go to the next slide. I think a few shifts that enabled this to stay within the system, and that's something that we were very conscious of. I think the first part was to bring in a lot of structural change. Now, these structural changes looked like policy, practices, and resources, something that were tangible, something that we could measure, something that helped also see the system a few success pointers for them to see, oh, these are certain best practices that we could see. First came in to have like a structured timetable for how classroom observations are. Have a practice that not just enabled the observers or the teacher mentors to go inside the classroom, but also drive the use of dashboards, drive the use of the reports that were coming in. And at the same time, what also helped in was to have like the cadre that was part of the system already, to have certain job roles that were defined now. So it didn't just have an activity of monitoring a classroom as a silo, but it brought in the process of also how do you tie in classroom support that is structured, that is consistent, and that's similar across the entire state for Andhra Pradesh. If you go to the next slide. I think while these structural changes are very key to any system, what was also important is how did we leverage this data? How do we leverage this practice? Was to one, ensure that there was a trust building exercise that happened between these teacher mentors and teachers. The data that was collected, the practice of classroom observation, which is very critical, which is something that the teachers generally fear, was purely structured to have feedback as a process. It was purely structured to not have any punitive actions against teachers. The recordings were important. The structured observations stayed between the teacher mentor and the teacher. And at the same time, what was also key to see what is also the relationship that the state and the district officials share with each other. How are the officers being leveraged to drive the right practice inside the classroom? If we do see a teacher or a broad pattern at a district level where teachers struggle with using material, how can we encourage teachers to drive material? So that became a lot more stronger conversation that the officers were able to drive versus why a teacher is not doing a certain practice. I think this also shifted the power dynamics between a teacher, because these were also peers. These were not necessarily someone with a higher hierarchy for a teacher, and that brought in a lot of I would say a system where which was built on coaching and mentoring as an idea versus just monitoring of a program. The next slide, please.
Thanks. Do you want to pick one more slide to maybe finish
just
on?
the last slide. Yeah. I think what was also important and the core of the work that we do is drive the right mental model shift, right? What is the shift that we want to bring in through this entire system was to ensure that the teachers have a chance to learn and grow. Data was now used as a support tool to identify the gaps, to ensure the needs were being strengthened. And I think the other crucial aspect of having the problem of network being resolved, because we also brought in the tool to be offline. The other issue of, can we also have classroom observation and the rubric structured, which was not subject specific, but classroom practice specific. Those were resolved. And then third, everyone in the system spoke the same language, the same expectation from the teacher and the classroom. With these three broad aspects of the shift helped us bring in not just like a innovation to be strengthened within the system, but also ensure that this sustains over time without our effort as well. Yeah, that's from me.
Thank you so much. I really love the part at the end about mental models. I think that's such a great kind of perspective and view to look at it through. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. Now I'll pass it over to Nganga Kibandi, Partnership and Advocacy Director at Dignitas, to talk about their work with EdTech and leadership.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And what a privilege to be here today to share and to learn from others. I work for Dignitas, and Dignitas is an organization that takes pride being 17 years old, serving very marginalized communities, looking at building the capacity of educators, specifically teachers and school leaders. And our model has really been informed by the gap we saw, one, in learning outcomes, but also the quality of teaching in this particular context that we serve in. We've had the privilege of scaling our work beyond the informal settlements in the last maybe 8 to 10 years, to also be able to serve in the public school space. And what has really enabled us to grow and continue growing is our ability to consume evidence, to innovate, and to really look at how we shift our models. We take pride in being a lead organization. We train and we coach, and coach is really our magic sauce in all the work that we do. And we've leveraged technology to really scale these two particular pieces with a strong focus on how do we strengthen instructional leaders to support teachers. I think several organizations have really mentioned and emphasized the important role that teachers play in a school, but we also know that the success of a teacher is highly dependent on the support they receive, both from the instructional leader, but also from the ecosystem where the middle tier officers come in. So we look at that bridge where support is involved, but at the same time, we build their capacity to be able to deliver curriculum, their capacity to be able to shift culture within the classroom, where learners grow and continue to grow to feel valued, they continue to feel safe, and really continue to enjoy their learning experience, because in that comfort is where we start looking at getting results around learning outcomes. So just about COVID, just before COVID, we started thinking a lot around scale and looked at technology and how would that be leveraged to be able to scale our work within different contexts. So initial conversations were very uncertain on what we wanted to do. We felt like we could work on existing platforms. So we initially started off with a learning LMS that was web-based, and we dubbed our innovation lead now. But a year and a half into it, we actually realized we could work better with an app, and this was based on learnings of uptake by our main consumers, who are teachers and school leaders, the challenges they were facing, and the challenge we were facing to support them. So this has since evolved into an app, and that app really is what we have been able to test, even as the first cohort, is really what we were testing and looking at its viability to act as both a remote training and a remote coaching tool. So the app and how it works is really to work towards one targeted training. So for each user, they kind of start with a pre-assessment that really gauges their level of understanding of a particular module. And as they go through the module, they're able to do a couple of things. One is engage with pedagogical practices and just basic theory that allows them to start shifting their practices. But what is most important about this, as they go through a module, is that they're able to set goals. And it is these goals that then inform the coaching element. And the coaching really takes two pathways. One is remote in its nature, where they're able to reflect on their own. But the most effective one is in-person coaching, and that's where our coaches come in. So there's a lot of data that's generated that informs the coaching sessions that they have with these particular teachers. And pretty much the app is founded on the ability to inform and embrace effective practice. So even as they study, as they go through the modules, how is effective practice embedded in all this? both individually but during coaching sessions. And this is mainly the sustainability element. And that feedback we also use to improve the content, but also the viability of the particular app. So as we think about how we're scaling it, one of the things we have done in the recent past is to be able to test this particular app to see its viability when it has complements around it. So as we were part of the initial lab and the Impact at Scale labs, we were looking at how does Lead Now, or what kind of results can we get Lead Now as a standalone, but comparing that to Lead Now with a complement of communities of practice and another component of Lead Now plus coaching. And what we've learned over time is that the coaching element still gives us the best results in terms of the completion rates, but also the application of new practices and seeing shifts both in teaching practices, but also in instructional leadership practices. So as we continue to develop the app, we are looking at several things. One is how do you simplify access? And that has really informed a lot of insights and conversations as an organization where we've been looking at what are these things that make the uptake of EdTech much easier for the end user. And here we're talking about the teacher and the school leader. What are these things that they're apprehensive about that would limit them from using or taking up technology as a platform to build their capacity in terms of professional development? And how do we leverage that? And I think the third one is really looking at the ecosystem. How enabling is it to allow for EdTech to thrive and succeed in a growing economy, in a growing education ecosystem? And these learnings we're really transferring back to Lead Now. And there are a lot of things we've done to evolve this particular app. One of the things we're currently celebrating is that based on our learnings and the evolution of our app, we are now able to even host content for other organizations. So we no longer just have to do it for ourselves, but the organizations who have recognized the power of the app, and we're hosting for them content. Most of that content we co-develop together. So it's also becoming an avenue that allows us to collaborate with others within the ecosystem. It also means that we are looking at value and not really replicating each other's efforts. So we'll be able to bring all our strengths. We're able to, one, create meaningful content, but at the same time, leverage the same platform in a way that different cohorts are able to be served within it. That doesn't mean it doesn't come with its own challenges, but we keep addressing them and making it more user-friendly. And what is interesting is that we've been able to achieve its usability even in very remote areas. And currently serving in the second year of serving a community in the education emergency space and the refugee setting where connection electricity is quite limited. But the uptake has been very encouraging, not as encouraging as the urban setting, but in that particular setting with all these limitations, we're still seeing quite a bit of progress. All said and done, and as we look at our main driver of innovation, we train, we coach, but we continue learning. At the end of the day, what we want to see is schools transform into vibrant spaces where learners continue to learn, but most important, they continue to thrive and to succeed. So I look forward to sharing a bit more about what we're learning, and thank you. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear about how your solution has evolved over the years as you've gone into different spaces and through different partnerships with others. So thanks so much for sharing all of that with us. Finally, I'll pass it over to Joshy Joes, Director MP Programs at Peepul, to talk about their work.
Hello, everyone. Is the PowerPoint loaded? Yeah, we at Peepul, we believe that transforming school is about creating engaging classrooms and engaging teachers, leading to engaged children, improved learning outcomes. That's what we believe in. Can we go to the next slide? As Damini was saying, India, is everything about scale. If we are working in India, it's about bringing everything at large levels, and digital is the best way to bring in large numbers. And early on, we realized that if we want to be part of digital, we need to get into Diksha, which is the biggest portal, the most the popular and the best portal for education. It has an access of 275 million people accessing it, or around 15 million teachers. are accessing it. So that become a kind of the platform we were pulling into. Yeah, why digital? Digital again, we can do a push and pull at the broadcast. We can do broadcast of material, and we can also bring in now latest bit. What we are trying to do is to bring in engagement. Again, matrices or any governance on data is much easier when you are doing a digital way of engaging. Next slide, please. So amidst the COVID crisis, till COVID, Diksha was mostly used for as a repository of textbooks in India. During COVID, the government of MP, the Madhya Pradesh, which is one of the state there, they requested us to build courses for teachers training, engaging teachers, and that's how we got into digital as people. Today we are in 52 districts. That we have teachers from 52 districts of the state engaging with us. Around 265,000 teachers are connecting with us. So it's large numbers, and we started broadly as a broadcast platform. Very soon we got into engagement. Next slide, please. So the digital engagement journey for people, we have close to 73 courses we uploaded on Diksha. In 2020, the initial years is mostly around in helping the right mindset for teachers to be part of the community. LO series were a complete hit with many of the teachers. And lately, we are mostly by 2025 is because this engagement, the courses were around peer learning communities and peer learning communities and transformation through practices is something which become more and more popular. Can we go forward? Next slide. As I was saying, initially, we used to do face-to-face training, and to build up the recall for teachers, we will use broadcast as a digital platform is used for mostly for broadcast, whether it's Diksha, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's YouTube. We use as broadcast forums, and it's mostly one-way engagement. As and when more and more courses were spin around, we realized that the only way to bring in engaged classrooms, engaged teachers, is to bring in peer learning communities. So now it's mostly interactive and community-based engagement with teachers. The teachers in MP, of course, are part of the enrolled group, but we also have teachers who are enrolling from other states. So this is a large community, and see, the community of practice has become a more kind of sustainable for us to work with. Next slide, please. A push and pull model, which I was talking about, the one-time engagement, face-to-face training, followed by WhatsApp or YouTube Live. It was mostly around YouTube broadcast. It was mostly around one-way interaction. And very soon we realized that push ones will has limitations. Now with the pull method, what we are doing is we are kind of anchoring the learning through on-ground communities of practices, which we call it cluster level Shaishik Samvad, which is almost a group of teachers coming together in clusters and helping them through VCs and YouTube Live, which is creating more and more engaged groups. So any subject matter which is broadcasted through, whether it's maths, whether it's Hindi or English, broadcasted through the Diksha or any other system, it is again taken up for recall through the communities of practice. Next slide, please. So I was saying that 285, 2.85 lakhs is the teachers covered. We have an 85% course completion out of the 73 courses uploaded, and 22 million learning hours. And a few of the courses which we have are the courses for engagement. The latest one, the course on peer learning communities, is about how do you set up a peer learning community? How do you help the teachers to come together? What's the kind of matrices you use to build up? So now we have reached a stage where we are using the digital platform to create blended training programs, both online and on ground. That's what we're doing. Next slide, please. Again, the one of the big thing with one big advantage we have with the EdTech or the digital platform is about the social nudges, helping people to enroll, helping teachers to engage with one another. There are rewards and recognition we can build in. There are games which we build into the system for helping the system to the teachers to engage. So this itself, the feedback loop, it becomes a kind of assertive feedback loop for everybody to come together. So nudging behavior and monitoring becomes much easier when you are in an online kind of engagement mode. Next slide. Next slide, please. Of course, and the program is recognized, Commonwealth Education Award. We have we've been featured in India Report, Digital Education, and a few others. But for us as a team, the best reward is when we see in remote parts of Madhya Pradesh or in Delhi, in both places where we see engaged communities, when we have groups where we can engage with our teachers, and teacher-facing materials becomes much more accessible. Next slide, please. Now that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is helping teachers to be digital savvy themselves. So we also run a teachers training program on digital, and that's the building up, helping them to hone skills, digital skills. Start with fundamentals, get them into Scratch Junior coding, and again through that, engaging children on digital platforms. And we are working with Amazon Future Engineers, AFE, as well as code.org to bring in AI and PAL as part of the program. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is what I was. One of the things which we have realized now, after COVID, a new strategic pivot we need to build, because the entire the content we had to relook. It need to be shorter. It need to be focused, and the way the content was transmitted, we were almost competing with the shorter versions like Reels for the people to get engaged. So discussion forums become more vibrant when they are of shorter duration, sharper. So the whole engagement modality had to change with the new AI and PL coming into play. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great to see an overview of all that you're doing, and then thinking at the end about new ways to pivot into an evolving space. So, thank you so much for sharing that. Since we just have a few more minutes left, I think we'll just have one question for each speaker. So, this first question is to Joshy and Simon. In what ways have you seen EdTech products or processes foster teacher agency and professional growth? So we can start with Joshy.
So I can answer this question in two levels. One is, when we started with Diksha, one of the things we observed, there was this inertia to engage with digital products. And whether it's an online, so the on-ground module or the physical module was always seems to be more catering to the needs than the online one. But when we started doing the blended one, that's how the magic worked. So blended is, that's where the engagement become better. That also led to people coming into courses which is purely so, and engaged groups become another instrument for helping them to be professional, and they themselves exploring into other digital platforms. So this exploration engagement is what actually helped.
Yeah, thanks. I think just to add on, technology the world over has made it possible to do things more cheaply, faster, and assessment is like one use case where, if you want to do an oral reading fluency assessment, you sit with a child, you have to time them, you have to do some calculations and maths to work out their accuracy based on the number of errors they made, based on the number of words they got wrong, if you're to do that on paper. And I think often that's just it becomes a step too far. Then you've got to do tracking and reporting and the kind of bureaucracy of being expected to share information. I think can be a real burden for teachers. So one that we found has really worked in our tools is this oral reading fluency assessment tool, where teachers basically for 1 minute have a child read and mark the errors that the child makes, and then it automatically calculates the child's reading fluency, their reading accuracy, and it does the reporting for them and gives them a list of each child's reading level, helps them complete their report card. So that to me is an example of just making something easier. And I think, with EdTech, a big focus should be just trying to take existing things that teachers are doing, but that take time, and making them easier. And I think that's how you expand agency, by giving people the tools to succeed.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for sharing your own experiences with that, and how EdTech can really be something that increases teacher agency as opposed to anything that takes away from it. The next question is for Nganga and Damini. We'd love to know what barriers you've encountered when building capacity among system leaders for EdTech integration, and if you have any stories about how you might have overcome any of those barriers. Nganga, we can start with you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so EdTech is new, and I think more often than not, it's not usually a celebration. It's come their way. There's a lot of jitteriness, especially from teachers. So I think the first challenge is actually a mindset shift. To how do I move from this traditional way of doing it's been working? Why are you bringing technology? And I think in the Kenyan setup, one of the things we realized is there's really a lot of pushback, especially from the older teachers. And the mindset shift has really been to look at EdTech as more of an enabler and not an inhibitor in any way. And those that have really embraced it have really moved forward. And what we've learned is to use these teachers who've really embraced the tech to motivate others. I think the second lesson we learned is teachers actually appreciate working with someone. They don't want just a one-day session of, here's an app, get on board, log in, these are your credentials. If you need help, call this number. It's someone to go with them step by step. and build that confidence of how they can use the technology. And we found that quite useful. So we've shifted our entire onboarding session. We used to have a once-off session. We now have a series of sessions and get teachers to a point of confidence. The next level of it really looks at also the end user who looks at the data, and that's where the middle tier officer comes in. So we had to kind of work with them and look at what kind of data do they want? How do they want the technology to work for their benefit? So it's also recognizing that we need to learn to listen to them. That it's not a question of just creating a solution and assuming that it solves a problem, but also being open to receiving feedback and being open to make certain infrastructural changes that really works for their benefit. And also, I think the last 2 points I'll make is it's a conversation. Tech is new. It's not a conversation that has a start and end. It's every day, it's a conversation. And it's evolving really fast. Just when we thought we had it right, AI came in, and that's a whole new ball game. And already there's fear. So what does this mean? How exposed do I feel? How do you get that conversation? And I think the long-term point of it is really to move from a point of apprehensiveness to achieving a mindset shift of I can use this. This can be an enabler, and even to a point of challenging us, the innovators, to think of I have this need. What can you do about it? And I think the most critical is really to be very clear on how we want it to work, and very clear on is it of benefit, and being open to really say to ourselves, it works. It could work better, and more importantly, is it adding value? And this really is a conversation across board, not just with the teachers, but even looking at government stakeholders who really have an interest in tech, and sharing those experiences of how we're best seeing it work and how it could serve a much bigger number of teachers, school leaders within the ecosystem. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I can just build on to what you just shared. I think very similar thoughts that we have where we also work. I think first barrier is that before we jump into bringing technology into the solution, as this only solution, I think the idea is that technology can be the part of the periphery that drives the right shift that we want to be. So the objective has to be the process. The objective has to be what is the shift that you really want to see, and the outcome becomes the heart of the problem versus just because we have a technology solution that takes the limelight versus the core of what problem the technology is resolving. And I feel like the biggest barrier isn't the skill, isn't just the adoption, isn't just the infrastructure, but it is the confidence of the system, of the players within, of the beneficiaries into the solution that will help them resolve their current work. I feel like generally newer tools, newer apps, newer solutions bring in a lot of fatigue, bring in a lot of a lot of barriers that makes our stakeholders feel very overwhelmed. If we know that they're already stretched, these solutions should help resolve their current work and not add to an extra layer of work. So that was the first thing that we really wanted to resolve. And hence, like I said, there has to be one solution, one app. So if there is an app where they are also feeding data for classroom, can there be a same app where they're also feeding in different informations that they definitely have to also put in as part of their role. So that was the first thing that we also wanted to drive. Two, I feel like a lot of something that also Nanga shared with respect to handholding. While we want to drive the solution, I feel like the pilots that we did had all these components of the challenges of of probably the barriers we know we will encounter. For example, we know there'll be a larger digital divide in our landscape. So can we resolve the problem of network? Can we resolve the problem of devices while we design the solution and we test it out in a smaller pilot? I think the second barrier was around also looking at what would be the rate of adoption. And it's going to be difficult if we set ourselves for a very high target, saying that the year one, we're going to see a very high, a universalization of the solution that we want to see. So we went in step by step. Our model was to look at a smaller pilot, test it out, take the learnings before we jump to the next. Before we jump to 2x, we have to resolve the problems that we've seen in the pilot stage, without which it doesn't make sense to move forward. And I think the third one was to begin with the state and the officials together. So a lot of co-working, co-designing became the first phase of the solution that was put in, and I think that helped us overcome multiple barriers that we know we would see, because they brought in all these challenges, saying that this solution will not work if this is not resolved. And that brought in so much of ownership from the state, from the stakeholders, from the government themselves, which became their solution versus it becoming us, and we as a vendor or a party or a different organization taking the entire weight to also drive the adoption. So it became a partnership versus a single solution driven organization.
Great. Thank you both so much. And thank all of you for sharing your experiences. It's great to start to hear so many common themes across countries, across organizations, sizes and focuses on how EdTech can really be used at the systems level as a way to increase teachers' agency and improve the system overall. So thank you all so much. I'll hand it over to Nicola in case we have any time for questions or to close out.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all of our speakers for a fascinating session today. I've been busy scribbling down notes and thinking about all sorts of ways in which we can build on this. I thought what really struck me today, and in speaking to some of the speakers beforehand, was the need for a whole systems approach, and what potentially sounds quite straightforward. I'm going to take the example of a class observation, for example. When you look at it at the whole systems level and you look at digitizing it, it brings in a whole host of other important considerations. But when done well, I think these tools can be truly transformational. And really picking up on that point about agency. I've been asked this question so many times. You put in EdTech apps into classes, are you reducing teachers' agency? But I really take the point about agency, giving people the tools to succeed. And I really liked that sort of ethos. So thank you to everyone for participating today. I hope those of you who have joined us for the webinar found it a useful discussion. We will be sending a link to everybody who's been online today with the YouTube recording when it's available. So please watch that, share it with your networks, share it as broadly as possible. And we hope to see you on further sessions. Our last session in this series is on the 16th of December, and we will be looking at a competition, the Brilla competition that was run in Latin America, looking at EdTech startups there and how you start up in this area, and how a competition like the Brilla competition can facilitate and support your business. So a different take for our final session. But thank you to everybody for taking part. It's been a really, really great session, and I wish you all the best with moving forward with your fantastic work. Thank you.